Today, my sermon is titled as Family Tree. And I'll tell you why I titled the sermon as Family Tree. But let me share some things about this. First thing is, families are interconnected system that shape individuals. Some are born into harmonious families, but others experience dysfunction. Now, I want to first explain what is a dysfunctional family means. Because I'm going to use this word a lot today. But you've got to understand what this word actually means. When I say a dysfunctional family, what I really mean is you have the father, mother, children living under the same roof, right? They do everything, including the responsibilities are met and done. They work really hard to take care of the needs of the home. But emotionally, they are not connecting with each other. That's what I call a dysfunctional family. When I say dysfunction, that means emotionally there is no connection. There is no emotional connection between the husband and the wife. There is no emotional connection between the parents and the children, right? You do everything. All the duties are done. Right? You come into the house in the night, you know, everybody comes, they sleep in the same house, and they get up in the morning and they just go into their different ways. But they're not really connecting emotionally. And that's what I'm talking about when I say dysfunctional family. So I now qualify to the word that I'm using. So when I say dysfunction, this is what I mean. Right? When you are born, you enter a family system. A network usually consists of a father, mother, and siblings. How you relate to this network largely determines how you will eventually live. Right? There are inevitable cause and effect relationship within families. However, individuality, personality, expression, and choice allows you to break free from the family system if necessary. And especially if there is, most of us, when at some point, because when things are not going right because of the dysfunction, we break out of our family. Right? Whether born into a harmonious or a dysfunction, family relationships are critical. Right? You are shaped by your family. Can I say that again? You are shaped by your family. Who you are today is what your family is all about. Right? Where you came from. So a family, why I'm bringing this picture of tree is that there is a root. Root is the father. There is a stem and there is branches. Stem is the mother and the branches are the children. So a family is a tree. And they all are interconnected. You can't kind of disconnect the tree. If you disconnect the tree will die. So families are like that. They're interconnected. They're interconnected. Everything works with each other. And that's why I actually bring this picture as family as a tree. The sermon is a part of series of Strong Families and Stronger Church. And it focuses on dysfunctional family today. And I'm going to talk about, there are many dysfunctional families in the Bible. I love the Bible because for this reason. Because Bible doesn't give us a flowery picture of our family. Bible talks about all the messes, right? Start talking about Abraham. Start talking about Noah. Start talking about, Isaac. Start talking about Jacob. Start talking about, David. Talk about all the families. There's so much mess in those families. And we can see as we read how much mess they created. And it's such a, in a way, it's encouraging because we can relate to those families. We know that, I believe our families are also like that. Ruanti, good to see you. So good to see you. Right? So I really believe that families are, as the Bible talks about families being, a mess, right? God is basically teaching us through these families. So today I'm going to actually talk to you from David's family. And my main thought is this. Can we go to the next slide, please? Yeah. No matter how broken your past, listen to this. No matter how broken your past, Christ redeems and restores. No matter how broken your past, Christ redeems. First thing is redeem, right? The word restoration means he's going to give back everything what you lost. Isn't it amazing? He redeems and he restores, right? And that's the hope we have as we dive into this sermon. So I want you to have this hope in you as you listen to the sermon, right? No matter how broken your past, Christ redeems and restores. David is known as a man after God's own heart, right? In the Bible, right? He wrote many psalms, right? We cherish them, including Psalm 23, one of our favorites, were written by David. However, like all of us, David was a broken person, right? So, though he had a great relationship with God, he struggled his family and failed as a father, I can say. And why am I saying this? Hang on, I'll take you to the story. In the first part of the sermon, I will recount the story of David's dysfunctional family, covering several chapters in the Bible. As we go through it, you will realize what a mess David's family was. This realization should give you hope, showing that even those broken families can experience healing. And God can use those families. And that's what God did with David's family. In the second part of my sermon, I will outline 5 principles necessary from transitioning from a dysfunctional family to a functional family. 5 principles I want to leave with you, and to become a healthy one. This is the focus today. Today, my sermon's focus is this. How can a dysfunctional family become healthy once again? It is possible through God, and we can do it, right? And that's our goal this morning as we get into this sermon. So let's talk about David's dysfunctional family, right? David's story found in 2 Samuel chapter 11 onwards. You can see the story that I'm recounting today all the way up to 14. I'm not going to read the whole 3-4 chapters. It's going to take a lot of time. So I'm going to actually give you the story, right? You can see his family struggle in this subject, right? And you remember that David committed adultery with Bathsheba, right? He actually committed adultery with his army commander's wife. While his army commander was at war, he saw his wife and she was beautiful, and he brought her into the palace and he slept with her and committed adultery. Not just adultery, he ended up killing the commander, right? He ended up killing her husband to hide the fact that he actually committed adultery. And that's what he did. After doing this, you see Prophet Nathan, coming into the palace and telling a story about an unfair, deal that happened. And finally, that he gets the point across to David. And David says, who is that person who did this unjust thing? And he says, he needs to be killed. And Nathan says, it's you. It's you. And then Nathan tells the story, how David has committed this. And David, and when he's saying something, he says something very profound in 2 Samuel chapter 12, verse 10. 2 Samuel chapter 12, verse 10. Let's read that part.
Now therefore, the sword will never depart from your house, because you despised me and took the wife of Uriah the Hittite to be your own.
Now therefore, the sword will never depart from your house. This is what God is saying to David, right? Because of his sin, because he used the sword to kill Uriah. And he's saying now that sword will not depart from your house, because you have despised me and took the wife of Uriah the Hittite to be your own, right? So David's sin had terrible consequences, right? It created a domino effect. Domino, right? Those blocks that you keep it, and then if you push one, everything falls, right? The same effect it had on David's family. His sin had same effect. God pronouncing judgment in 2 Samuel chapter 12, verse 10 and 11. Though David repented before Nathan, immediately when he heard, he fall flat. He fall, flat on the floor, and he repented before God. Yes, he did the right thing by repenting. But there is one more important step that he should have taken after repenting before God. That is repenting to his family and warning them against making the same mistakes. He should have told them, don't do what your father did. Look at the consequences. Had he used his brokenness and humility to caution them, things might have turned out differently in his family. But he didn't do that. He put his life right with God, but he didn't put his life right with his family. He sinned against his wives. He sinned against his children, but he never put his relationships right with them. Unfortunately, David failed to do this. Like many fathers, he became passive, displaying extreme characteristics of passivity. When you say passivity, what I mean by passivity is being silent. No matter what happens, you are quiet. You don't talk about anything. You are basically withdrawing. You withdraw from everything. You withdraw from the things that's happening, and you live in a different world. I want to talk about few failures of a passive father as I was recounting the story of David. Right? The first thing about a passive father is the next slide. The passive father will have anger without action. A passive father will have anger without action. You can see that David doing that. David had multiple wives, which is okay in the Old Testament, even though it was not strictly approved by God. His eldest son his name is Amnon, and he is the first wife's son. And then his second, another wife had two children called they're called Absalom and Tamar. Both of them are very beautiful, the Bible describes. Right? Including Absalom was a handsome guy, and Tamar was a beautiful girl. And Amnon, actually, the elder brother, the half brother, liked Tamar, half sister. And so what he did was, he did something very terrible. He actually he was sick and brought Tamar into his palace. And when she came in with the food, he got everyone to get out of the room, right? And then he asked her to sleep with her. And she refused. She said, "This is not right. You can't do this. Don't do this, my brother," she says. But he didn't listen to her. And then she went on to say, "If you really want to do this, talk to my father and ask for me, and he will give it to you." But he didn't listen to that either. But he actually forced rape her. And after raping Tamar, what he did was, this news goes to David. And what did David do? 2 Samuel 13:21. What did David do?
When King David heard all this, he was furious.
When King David heard all this, he was furious. He was angry but did nothing about it. He was angry but did nothing about it. Yes, despite his anger, he took no action. He may have thought, "I committed adultery and murder. Who am I to intervene in my children's dispute? Even if I go and talk to them, they might point their fingers at me, so I better be quiet." I don't know what thought went through his mind, but he never intervened in the matter. Our hearts should be bleed for Tamar. She was so broken. In fact, after she was raped by her own brother, this guy, Bible says he loved her so much. But after this incident, look at his reaction. 2 Samuel 13:15.
Then Amnon hated her with intense hatred. In fact, he hated her more than he had loved her. Amnon said to her, "Get up and get out."
This is what happens when you rape a woman. Even though you love that person, when you rape, you will have intense anger against that person, and you want to get rid of that person. And that's what Amnon did. He actually said, "Now get out of me. I don't want you. Go out of this place." And he chased her. And she was completely broken. And she was wearing this long frock that actually symbolized a virginity. Those days, when a girl actually wore a long frock that symbolizes virginity. But what does she do? In 2 Samuel 13:19, you look at what she did.
Tamar put ashes on her head and tore the ornate robe she was wearing. She put her hands on her head and went away, weeping aloud as she went.
Can you picture that? Right? Tamar put ashes on her head and tore the ornate robe she was wearing. Means that I'm not virgin anymore. She puts her hands on her head and went away, weeping aloud as she went. And what should be a father's response? When she sees a daughter being put in this place, he should have taken things into his hand and did justice. But David should have absolutely supported Tamar, assuring her, "I'm with you. No matter what evil is committed against you." So the same God who forgave me is going to heal you. He's going to take care of this, and he's going to bring justice, my daughter. This is what a father should have done. But what did he do? He's absolutely a passive father. He's in a dysfunctional family. When father is passive, children often take responsibilities for resolving issues. So, because he didn't do anything, Tamar's full brother Absalom took matters into his heart. Eventually, what Absalom did was, he put a plan to take Amnon out of the house to a longer place. And what did he do? He murders Amnon. Because father didn't do anything. So children have to take things into their hands. And they have to do something about it. So what did his son Absalom did? Murdering his own brother for what happened. Okay? And then in 2 Samuel 13:31, look at after this murder what David did.
The king stood up, tore his clothes and lay down on the ground, and all his attendants stood by with their clothes torn.
Big deal. He got up, tore his garments, and he's crying. Right? Now his own son, one son has killed another son. At least at this moment he should intervene. He should stop it. This can't go on. God already warned him. There will be killing in your family. So he should have realized this is what God said, and I need to put a stop to this. But he didn't do anything. He was a passive father. He just cried. He had a lot of emotions. So, you can see how David is dealing with his family. David grieved but did nothing to address the situation. The second thing that you see about a passive father is there is reconciliation without forgiveness. There is reconciliation without forgiveness. Absalom fled after the murder of his own brother, and for 3 years he lived outside. And when he returned to Jerusalem, David basically didn't want to bring him to the palace. He doesn't want to deal with him, but he kept him outside for 2 years in a house. He was living on his own, not receiving the father's attention. When a son does not receive father's attention, to get the father's attention, he would do something. So what did Absalom do? He went to Joab's field and he set the Joab's field on fire. Fathers, listen to me. When you don't give attention to your sons and children, to get your attention, they're going to set things in fire. And that's what Absalom did. Literally, he set a field on fire to get the attention of the father. Right? And today, in our families, when you don't give attention to your children, what they do is, they will go and do something that brings hurt to you. Do you know that? They will do something to bring hurt to you. Why? At least then, even if you scold them, you are giving some attention. And they like it. They like the fact even you scold them. By scolding, you are giving attention. I hope you see what's going on here. I hope you see what's going on here. Right? 2 Samuel chapter 14 verse 33.
So Joab went to the king and told him this. Then the king summoned Absalom, and he came in and bowed down with his face to the ground before the king. And the king kissed Absalom. So
when this happened, David calls Absalom to the palace, and he comes, he bows down, and when he gets up, immediately he kissed him. There's no question about you killed your brother. There's no question about, why you did this. There's nothing about resolving the matters, the problems that has happened 5 years ago with him and Amnon. Nothing. There is nothing. So he basically forgives without, any reconciliation without forgiveness. There is reconciliation, but there is no forgiveness. Right? They're not talking about what happened. There was no discussion of the murder, no request for forgiveness, and no resolution. This reflects many dysfunctional families, where unresolved conflicts remain buried, leading to deep, lasting damages. And in the dysfunctional families, when things go wrong, you don't talk about it. You don't deal with those issues. You don't deal with the big issues. When your children are doing something not right, you don't talk about it. And sometimes when fathers do this, listen to me, children. Some of you are really angry with your mother. Listen to me. Why are you angry with your mother? You are angry with your mother because it's your mother who always nagged you. It was a mother who always came and said that you're wrong. It was your mother who always, want to put things right. And you are angry with your mother and you are so happy with your father. I'm sorry to say this, but your father should have done what your mother did. You understand what I'm doing? And if you would have done that, it could have changed you. But because he didn't take that responsibility, mother has to take that responsibility. Mother has to step in. And she became the wrong person. She became the person that you are angry with today. I hope you're thinking with me. Right? Absalom, unchecked, eventually plotted against his father, leading to a civil war. And when a father does not correct the son, when a father does not bring character into his son, you think the son will love you more? No, it's completely opposite. What Absalom did was he went against his father. He started a civil war, ended up a major civil war, and in the civil war, finally we see David was humiliated and Absalom was killed. Right? So you see the consequences of a dysfunctional family. I just said the story of David just to show you what dysfunctional family, how it really affects every part of the family. Right? So let's move into the second part of the sermon, which I talked about, how we are going to now look at how, the 5 principles that we can use to move from a dysfunctional family to a healthy family. Right? The point number 1, David's failure teaches us valuable lessons. The point number 1 that we learn from his family is an interrelated system. I said this earlier, but I want to reiterate. Everything David did had impact on his children. It's interrelated. You are interconnected. It's like a tree. If one part of the tree is damaged, it will have an impact on the whole tree. Right? So if one person in the family does something wrong, if one person sins in the family, it has an impact on the whole family. You have to understand this. You have to understand, there's nothing individual about family. Whatever you do, it's only you. No, it's not. It doesn't work like that. In a family, when you do something, it affects the whole family. We are interrelated. We are interconnected. A father's action or inaction affect the entire family. David's emotional and physical absence had consequences. We can see the consequences of David's emotional and physical absence. Dysfunctional families resembles a violin. In a violin, how many strings are there? Please educate me. In a violin, how many strings? Anybody knows? I asked this same question in the Tamil service also. Let's take a guitar. At least I know 6 strings. Huh? In violin, 4 strings? Okay, there are 4 strings, right? If one string is, if one of the violin string out of tune, the whole violin is out of tune. Yeah? Families are like that. Yeah? Families are like that. It represents a violin. If one string out of tune, the whole violin is out of tune. And that's what family is all about. And we got to understand this. So first thing is that families are interrelated systems. So it works in a way that if one person, if one part of the family, one member of family, when they go out of tune, it affects the whole family. And some of your children today are struggling, and it affects the whole family. If your son struggles, it not only affects your son, it affects your daughter's life. It affects everyone. If your daughter struggles, it's going to affect the whole family, right? So one person's struggle affects the whole family. That's the first thing we need to learn. And the second thing I want to learn is I want to break a myth that we have in our society. The myth is, it says that time heals wounds. And I want you to know this. Time does not heal family wounds. Time does not heal family wounds. Remember this. Remember this. If you are hurt by your family, it never gets healed with time. And if you're thinking as time goes by, it's going to get healed, you are living in a myth. It's not going to work. It's not going to work. David assumed time would resolve his issue with Absalom. But after 5 years later, Absalom comes back. It's unresolved. Pain carries through. Generation to generation, pain goes in. Family conflict even goes through forever. And you can go to some funerals and see how, one sibling comes in and every other sibling don't want to be in the funeral while the sibling comes in. And after that sibling leaves, the next sibling walks in. right? Even the dispute they're having cannot be resolved in a funeral. Actually, in a funeral, it gets actually quite acute because wounds never heal. Family wounds never heal. They are there. They will always be there. And if you're thinking, as I'm growing up, I'm getting into 50s and 60s and 70s, I'm going to get healed. I want to tell you this morning. They don't get healed on its own. Don't kid yourself. Because they don't get healed, we need to do the point number 3. What is that? Point number 3. Whatever is broken should be fixed. David sought God's forgiveness, but he failed to fix his family issue. Families cannot ignore brokenness. I want you to know every family is broken. Every family that lives under the sun is broken. Is there any perfect parents here? Can you lift your hands? I want to make a statue and bow down before you. There are no perfect parents. There are no perfect parents. We are all broken. We are all broken. We are all shattered people. And we can't ignore our brokenness. And I want you to understand, as your children are growing up, we are going to make mistake with our children. We are going to make a lot of mistake bringing children up. And as we go along, when God convicts us, there are times that we need to stop and deal with the mistakes that we have made. At times that we need to, husband and wife need to come together and we need to talk about the mistakes that we have made as we are, bringing our children up. And our children are today, myself and Anu, our children, they're 13 and 12. But we go back to the first 5 years, how we dealt with our children. And we talk about it, and we talk about it, and we talk about the mistakes that we made. In fact, we have to, ask forgiveness from our son for certain things we did when he was very young. Harsh ways that we handled him. We have to, go back to those times, and even while he was young as he is, we have to ask forgiveness from him. And I'm telling you, church, that this is such an important part in the family, growing a family, especially making sure that your children are healed and they're growing in a healthy environment. You don't want to, pass on the brokenness that you and I came from into our next generation. We don't want to do that. We want to pass on something different. We want to pass on a legacy of healing into the next generation. And that can be done when you are consciously and intentionally, you are looking at how you are parenting and understanding where you go wrong. And when you go wrong, that you got to take seasons of times to sit as a husband and wife to discuss where you went wrong, and you got to deal with your children. I want to talk to the parents who have children, who have young adults and youth children, right? They are preparing for marriage. They are getting into that age. I want to talk to you. I'm telling you this morning, listen to me very carefully. Go back today home. Husband and wife, I want you to get together with each other and talk about how you both brought up your children. You would have given them the education. For sure, I know that in Candy culture, all of you worked so hard to give education. You would have given them, all the comfort under the sun, with your own ability, with all the abilities you would have done that. I have no doubt about that. I was talking to even a father, he said, when my son went into the first year of Trinity, I left the country because I want him to study at Trinity. And I came back when he finished A-levels. My son is not at home today with me. And his goal was to get him to Trinity and make sure that he studied through. And he worked hard, and it's good intention. He did everything right. But that's not what his son wanted. His son wanted the father. His son wanted father's attention and affirmation. The son wanted father's love. Son wanted father to engage with him emotionally. And this is what a son did not receive. This is not what our children have not received. And if you are, your children are at the stage of getting into marriage, I want you to talk about and see whether you had enough time to give this to your family. And if you have not given to your children, emotionally, if you have not connected with them, emotionally, if you have not affirmed with them, emotionally, if they have not received what they need to receive as they are growing up, church, listen to me, it's not too late. It's not too late. You can have that open conversation. Once both of you agreed, bring them together, sit on a table and get into that hard conversation and tell them, hey, look, I didn't do this right. And in my thinking, I thought I want to give you the best education. In my thinking, I want to give you the best school. In my thinking, I want to give you the best comfort. And I worked hard to do that. But I realize now, I failed to give you what you really want. What you really wanted was my attention, my time. What you really wanted was my connection with you. And I was not able to give you at the time you needed that. I'm really sorry about that. Forgive me. Will you have that conversation with your young adult children? You know why I'm asking you to have this conversation is that you can heal them so that they will not carry that into the next generation. Listen to me, church, carefully. We don't want these children to carry this to the next generation. Your family tree that they come from is who they are today, and they're going to give that. Sorry about that. And you can change it today. You can change it today. Have those conversations with your children. Bring them. Talk to them. Heal them. Bless them. Pray with them. Pray that those things that happened will not have consequences in their lives, and pray a prayer of healing into their lives, and connect now. It's not too late. Sit with them in their young adults age is a good time, especially when if they're in between somewhere around 18 to 25. It's a good stage to reconnect with their children, your children, and pour that love back into their life and give them that love, and they're going to grow and go from home being in a very healthy place. So whatever is broken can be fixed. Children, I want you to understand this. You cannot fix your parents. You cannot fix your parents. So stop trying to fixing your parents. That's not your role. But you can do something about what has happened to you. Take responsibility for what has happened to you. And put a boundary. And say that I'm not going to take this to the next family. I'm not going to take this to the next generation. And I'm going to make a difference in my life. So I'm going to get healed. Do whatever it takes. Come and talk to some of us. We will help you to get healed. And again, I'm saying about this, trauma session that's coming up. Some of you need to sign up. If there is pain in your life, I'm telling you, it's not going to get healed automatically. You need to process the pain. And the trauma, that session that is going to happen over 4 days is going to really help you. Sign in and go through it. Talk to Anu. And she's, these days, both of us, we really, feel that God wants to bring healing into our church. And we are working together in this. We are working together in, she takes a different role. I take a different role. I do the preaching. She does she's just finished, by the way, she just finished master's in counseling, right? She just finished. She handed over her papers and she's done, right? So that's her specialty, right? And she's practicing counseling. Right? She's a practitioner now. Right, by the way. If you want to talk to her, and she will help you. She will help you to process some of the things that you need to be processing. Okay? The point number 4, right? Point number 4 is that rejoice in God's grace even in broken families. It's not all doom and gloom. Right? I want you to know this. In spite of your brokenness, in spite of families being broken, the grace of God is available. The grace of God can work through broken families. I want you to know this. Despite David's failure, God still used him. You know, there was a son that he had who should have never born. That is Solomon. Solomon should have never been born because he was born to Bathsheba, who is Uriah's wife. But God used Solomon to build his temple. Can you imagine that? A son who should have never been born is the son that God used to build his temple. Can you see the grace of God? In spite of our failures, in spite of our mistakes, in spite of our brokenness, God uses broken families. God's grace is sufficient in spite of all our brokenness to take us to the next level. And God used Solomon not just to do anything. He said, David, you can't build the temple. You can't build the temple. You have blood in your hands. But I will use your son Solomon to build my temple. Remember that? And he used him. Not only that, Solomon wrote one of the best books in the Bible, Proverbs, the wisdom book. And it came out of Solomon. You know, in spite of our brokenness, in spite of our failures, in spite of our mistakes, God takes that and uses it to do something very profound. Right? God's grace allows individuals to rise above dysfunctional families. And I can tell you, I'm one of them. In spite of the dysfunctionality I had in my family, coming from a different religion, I was never meant to be in this place. I was never meant to, be a pastor. I never, when I was growing up, if somebody said that you're going to be one of the pastors, I would have never believed that. But that's not my journey. I had a dysfunctional family. I had a, alcohol addicted father who was beating my mother since the day I understood the world. I saw that. I saw that through my eyes. For growing up, my childhood memory is that. And having that kind of a dysfunctionality in my family, God touched me. And I'm not supposed to be here today, but He has brought me to this place. And it's the grace of God. And He can do that to me. If He can do that to me, He can do that to you. Wherever you are, how hurt or painful or how broken you are, I want you to know this, that God can touch you, God can heal you, God can take you on His journey, and His purposes are never going to stop because of your brokenness. In spite of your brokenness, He's going to take you and He's going to use you. He's going to take you to the next level. He's going to take you to not just heal you, but He's going to use you to heal others. Church, this morning, I want you to know there is hope, and there is, amazing hope that we have in this God. Because in spite of wherever we come from, our God is capable. One of the young adults said recently, he put it lovely way. I hope one of these days you will hear him saying this. He said, He made my mess into a message. I love the way he put it. He made my mess into a message. And I need to say this message. I need to preach this message. Right? And I believe that wholeheartedly. And I know that wholeheartedly. And that's what God is good at. He is good at making a mess into a message. And our God specializes in that work. Amen. Amen. And that's the hope you and I have this morning. That's the fourth thing. And the last thing I want to talk to you is this. The last thing I want to talk to you is that you and I belong to the right branch of David's family tree. You are saying, no, I don't want to be part of David's family tree. But wait, don't be in a hurry. You and I are the right branch of David's tree. What am I saying? Let's go to Isaiah 11 verse 1. See what it says.
A shoot will come up from the stump of Jesse. From his roots, a branch will bear fruit.
Who is Jesse? David's father. Right? David's father. A shoot will come up from stump of Jesse. From his root, a branch will bear fruit. Which branch the Bible is talking about here? Who is this branch? Jesus. It is the Jesus. Actually, Jesus was part of this broken family. He came through the genealogy of this broken family. You know how much broken this family is? There is Rahab, the prostitute, is part of this genealogy. Bathsheba, who actually part of this genealogy. And the many other broken people are part of this genealogy. And that's where God chooses this family to bring Jesus to this world. In spite of all the brokenness, God used this family to bring Jesus to this world. And you and I today connected back to this tree through Jesus. And you and I were not branch of this tree, but Jesus has connected us back to this tree because of what Jesus has done on the cross. You remember one of the most, confusing statements Jesus made in Matthew chapter 12, verse 50, where, there's a group of people comes and says, when he was teaching, your mother and your brother are out there. They're waiting for you. And what was Jesus' reply? What was Jesus' reply? Do you remember? It's almost very insulting to the family, right? What he said was, who is my mother or my brother or my sister, but he who does the will of my Father in heaven? Who is Jesus' brother, mother, sister? Who is that? Who is that? The one who listens to his teaching and obey. And who are you today? Who are you today? You are that family member Jesus is talking about in that passage. You who have believed in Jesus today, you who have, obeying Jesus today in your own way, whatever with all the shortcomings, you are still wanting to please Jesus and you're obeying Jesus, you are part of this family. Jesus had made you part of this family. Do you remember how I started this sermon series? The sermon series was started with speaking about the Trinitarian family. You remember that? The Trinitarian family, right? And I want you to know, no matter what broken family you come from, today you belong to the heavenly family. You belong to God's family. And He has made you His own son. Galatians chapter 4, verse 4 to 7, He said, He was born of a woman, born under the law, to redeem those who are under the law. Who was this? Jesus. And he came into this world and He was born under the law. Means the very law that actually makes us sinners. He was born under the law. He was born into a woman that all of us, we were born into a woman. And we came through that sinful nature. And the same sinful nature Jesus came to what? To redeem those who are under the law. So that, next verse says, so that you can be adopted into His family. So that you can be adopted into His family. Means you can become His son and His daughter. And today, that's who you are. You are part of God's family. God calls you, you're my daughter. God calls you, you're my daughter. God calls you, you're my son. And you are part of God's family. And because you are part of God's family, that He's going to bring healing upon you. In spite of all what you have gone through. And He's going to set you free. And Jesus paid the price. I spoke about Isaiah 53 verse 5 and 6 just last week. And He said, by His wounds, what happened? We are healed. By His wounds, we are healed. And I want you to know this morning, no matter how much of pain that was caused in you through your family, that interconnected family that you grew up in this world, I want you to understand, no matter how much pain it has brought you in, I want you to know one thing. By His wounds, you are healed. By His wounds, you are healed. I want you to know this. I want you to know this morning. Would you stand with me? Let's go to the Lord and let's ask Him to help us this morning once again.